those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the program today. It is Friday. My name is Paul. You have found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality where we are building a liberty machine. Thank you so much for being with us. Now, we got a great show for you. Coming up at the bottom of this hour, we'll be talking with UALR economist Dr. Michael Packo. There were some new numbers that came in this week. Also, new numbers that came in earlier this month that we haven't gotten to talk about. We had gross domestic product numbers as well. That came in around the 7th of this month. So we'll talk to him about that as well as the unemployment rate and income and that sort of thing coming up. And by the way, I sat down with him yesterday to get this interview, and I couldn't help it because Michael is the chairman of the Libertarian Party of Arkansas as well. And so I had to get a question in there about how, the Democrats have really messed up with Mahoney and dropping out of the race, and they're likely not going to have a candidate on the ballot. And so everybody's like, well, the race is over. Well, first of all, the race was over because none of the candidates were going to beat Tom Cotton. But there are media reports saying, there's still a libertarian that's going to be on the ballot. And so I had to ask Dr. Packo about that. So we'll listen to that coming up here at the bottom of the hour. Then at 7:33, Congressman Bruce Westerman will be back with us because it is Friday, and we typically talk to Congressman on Friday, and it's always great to have him on. We're very much looking forward to talking with Congressman Bruce Westerman. Ladies and gentlemen, the telephone number is 870-275-9799. If you want to contribute to the program, you can call or text the number. I do want to remind everybody, if you're on the Conduit News Facebook page, you see that we have some big news coming. We're very excited to more efficiently bring you the news that we do every single day. And so stay tuned for those announcements as the days and weeks follow. So we're really excited about that. Now, let's start, because we really haven't done this all week. We've really focused, and we're going to continue to focus on Governor Asa Hutchinson, the governor's law firm, the governor's son, the Chinese deals. We're going to continue to focus on that as things develop. Of course, we gave you the statement from the governor's office yesterday, which raised more questions. But it is at least somewhat encouraging that they're at least taking this seriously by releasing the statement because I think they know it looks bad. So we'll continue to focus on that. But I want to focus real quick because we haven't really talked about impeachment. And you're going to hear this all weekend. We're going into the holiday season next week as well. Thanksgiving is next week. And so you may have a lot of family members that are very much misled, very anti-Trump, or maybe they're not anti-Trump. They just still believe that these journalists are good and these companies, they're still giving CNN the benefit of the doubt. Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about it. Let's go to Devin Nunes. Here is Devin Nunes at the beginning of the impeachment committee or the impeachment hearing yesterday, the Twitter video, Joe. And there it is. Listen to this. Oh, sorry. We're zooming in here. I'm sorry. We've got a...
Is not meant to discover the facts. It was designed to produce a specific Halloween, probably the most appropriate day. Democrats in the House of Representatives vote to open an official impeachment inquiry against President Trump.
Yep, that's what happened. Halloween.
What you've seen in this room over the past 2 weeks is a show trial.
Mm-hmm.
The planned result of 3 years of political operations and dirty tricks. Campaigns waged against this president. And like any good show trial, the verdict was decided before the trial ever began. After all, after denouncing the president for years as a Russian agent and a threat to democracy, how could the Democrats not impeach him? If they don't move to overthrow him, it would indicate that they don't really believe their own dire warnings about the threat he poses. The Democrats only needed a pretext. When their Russian dossiers and investigations failed to do the job, they moved to Plan B, the Ukraine hoax. This spectacle with its secret deposition.
You know what's interesting about that is if you can hit the pause button or get that working again. I didn't realize this, but you realize the call with the Ukraine was on, what was it, on July 24th or 25th? July 25th. Do you realize when Robert Mueller testified? July 24th. Remember how absolutely abysmal Robert Mueller performed in that testimony? You remember that? Some people thought he was acting. Some people thought he was senile. He didn't even know that one of his attorneys that was working for him had also worked, I think, for Fusion GPS. I mean, you had ABC, CNN. You actually had these guys who were extensions of the Democrat Party in the deep state saying this was really bad for the Democrats. That was on the 24th, and then the call that got now. So if you're in the deep state and you've been rooting for the president to be impeached or derailed because of Robert Mueller, if that's what you've been rooting for, and then you're sitting there and you're a deep state operative and you hate the president and you think that you know better and you really hate the country because you're trying to nullify 63 million Americans' votes. And the Robert Mueller investigation was an abject failure. And you know why they knew? Because the media actually told them, all of it, in uniform. CNN, MSNBC, this was a really bad day for the Democrats. So the next day, you hear that call with President Trump. You overhear it, or you hear of it, that President Trump had a call with Zelensky. And now that the Mueller investigation was over, now that Mueller was a complete failure in front of the entire American people, the entire Washington, D.C. establishment, a deep state operative hears that call, and you know what President Trump says? He says, CrowdStrike 2016, Ukraine, and they realize, oh no, he's coming. Everything we've accused him of doing with Russia, the Democrat Party has done, if not worse, with Ukraine. And it's not all Democrats. I mean, it's deep state, because I know Mitt Romney's son is also implicated with some of these companies as well. Do you understand? They literally went from one hoax to another based on the fact that they lost in the Mueller situation. If you look at those two timelines and you put yourself in the shoes of a deep state bureaucrat or intelligence official who has a serious case of Trump derangement syndrome, he hears that call and realizes not only did Robert Mueller and that whole Russia hoax fail and it just had happened, now the President of the United States is going to expose everything we did leading up to this hoax, leading up to this point. And that's why you had the this reaction, okay? It was one out of desperation, folks. It wasn't one out of patriotism or some need to be honorable to correct some wrong that you see that the President of the United States is doing. It had nothing to do with that, if you look at that timeline. This is not really even that far-fetched of a speculation. I'll admit it is a speculation, but put yourself in their shoes. Robert Mueller had just embarrassed the entire Democrat Party and the media. Back to Devin Nunes yesterday.
And mid-hearing press conferences is not meant to discover the facts. It was designed to produce a specific storyline to be pushed forward by the Democrats and their supporters in the media. Ladies and gentlemen, as we approach Thanksgiving, Speaker Pelosi has just made clear, just today, USMCA, free trade deal with Canada and Mexico, that will boost our economy, won't be signed this year. So I hope Mr. Schiff will clarify how much longer we will waste on this effort and what other vital legislation he's willing to sacrifice for this impeachment crusade.
Okay, so that's Congressman Devin Nunes. Real quick, about a year ago, a little more than a year ago, I got to sit down with Devin Nunes, and we were talking about what we now think will be released the IG report. Okay, well, we were talking about FISA D-class, but we're now told that Horowitz report will be released on December the 9th. The Senate's going to start taking over and investigating some of this stuff. But I just want you to understand, we've been waiting for a whole year for the president to declassify what may be in this IG Horowitz report. And so back a year ago, I sat down with Devin Nunes, and it sounded like this.
So isn't this really the left's attempt? I mean, really, they've been rejected, and now they want to make it about Russia. They want to delegitimize the American people, our will, who voted for Donald Trump.
Yeah, what I say about collusion with Russia, we've looked for collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia. We haven't found any. We have found collusion between the Russians and the Hillary Clinton campaign and the Democratic Party. People forget this, but the Clinton campaign and the Democrats paid
Now we found about
a
Ukraine.
law firm that hired a special group to go out and get dirt from Russians on Donald Trump, and they fed that into the FBI. That is the very exact thing that they're accusing Donald Trump's campaign of doing. They were doing, and there needs to be an investigation of that. We on the House Intelligence Committee, we've uncovered that. We uncovered that they had paid for dirt that they bought from Russians and funneled it into the FBI, and we expect DOJ and FBI to investigate that too.
They got the FISA warrant because of all that. I mean, essentially, they bought. There's a lot of middlemen there, but they bought a FISA warrant.
Yeah,
what it seems to
they
me.
used. Well, I think the concerning part is that they would take dirt from a political campaign, get a warrant in a secret court on an American citizen, using that dirt from political operatives that ended up being totally false, not proven. That should have never been done. But they also gave it to the press, and the press ran news stories on it, and then they used the news stories to corroborate the dossier as if it was two different things. And that was totally wrong. And then we think the American people deserve to see the rest of what they used and the tools and techniques that were used to target the Trump campaign and Trump campaign associates. And that's what we're asking the president to declassify.
Yeah, and so talk a little bit about that. Is the declassification that's been reported, is that going to happen this week, you think?
Well, we hear that they're working on it. We hear that they're trying to get the approval process done. I mean, the president has the power just to do it.
So now, one development since then, again, that was in September of last year. One development since then, folks, is that the president gave William Barr the authority to declassify anything he wants to. And so, there's a lot of people that have talked about this Horowitz report on FISA abuse. There are reports now that there are former FBI lawyers under investigation for altering the 302s or altering, I'm sorry, not 302s. Is that the Michael Flynn thing? Altering the FISA application. There's a video I saw circulating of Rod Rosenstein when he was under oath in one of the committees. This was, I think, back when the Republicans had control. And he was essentially, if you go back and listen to it now, knowing that what we know or knowing what we think we know, it to me kind of seems like Rod Rosenstein was trying to tell the committee, I did sign it. Yep, I signed the FISA warrant, but the one I signed is not what was presented to the judge. And so we'll see what happens here. But, yeah, we're still waiting. It's over a year later. We're still waiting for the D-class. I hope that the declassification of all of this happens at the same time the IG report is released, because if it's not declassified, then they're going to have to redact a good portion of the report. You know what I mean? The things, and so you don't want to get an IG report that's just got a bunch of black lines in it. So we're going to need, and I think it can all be done in one fell swoop. This is about information. This is about giving information to the people. About what their government has done. And one more thing before we go. You're going into Thanksgiving, and the media is telling you after the last 2 weeks of testimony, specifically the last 2 days, that the president is finished. Do you remember this? The president is finished. The president is done. Donald Trump, I retweeted this last night. You can follow me on Twitter at Paul Harrell 1776. Donald Trump Jr. reminding us how you can't possibly trust the media. Go to the Twitter. Go to Donald Trump Jr. and his tweet, Joe. I want people to listen to this. A refresher on the BS and why the media has no credibility. Starting in, April. Just go ahead and hit the play button. You'll see the day there.
Breaking news. A bombshell.
Today is a
February
turning point.
2017.
Today was historically bad for President Trump.
Today was a turning point.
A turning point.
We're at a turning point here.
The beginning of the end for the Trump presidency.
We have another bombshell.
Mike Pence might have to assume the office of the presidency.
Rumblings of the word impeachment.
Breaking news.
Another bombshell out of the White House.
I believe this is the beginning of the end.
I do too.
It's really the beginning of the end.
He may be feeling the walls closing in on him.
All the walls closing in on him.
The walls closing in on him.
Breaking news, a new bombshell.
One astrologer says this means the beginning of the end for President Donald Trump.
Trump will resign.
Trump is going to resign.
Is this the tipping point? I know we've said it over and over.
You think this is a tipping point?
And over and over.
This is a tipping point.
And over and over.
Breaking news, President Trump off the rails.
It was the beginning of the end today.
The beginning of the end.
Breaking news tonight, new bombshell.
This is the beginning of the end.
September 2017. October 2017.
The walls closing in.
The walls closing in.
Breaking overnight bombshell.
This is a very dramatic day, and I think it might be near a tipping point. Do you think this is a tipping point?
December 1st, 2017, you can mark it down. This is the day that everything changed.
The beginning of the end?
Beginning of the end.
The beginning of the end.
The beginning of the end.
The beginning of the...
We begin tonight with the bombshell.
January 2018.
Trump is in trouble.
The president will resign.
Another
February.
hour, another bombshell.
This is a tipping point.
Trump's going down.
March,
This president
April.
could be impeached.
Resignation. Resignation. I don't think this president
May.
is going to serve out his term. Mr. Trump will not serve out his term. He will not serve out his term. No way. No how. Breaking news.
Absolute bomb.
Donald Trump is not. He's done. And it's
June.
over.
It's over.
The walls closing in.
The walls closing in.
July.
This is going to be the Achilles heel.
Breaking news tonight. I expect Trump
August.
to depart.
This week will be the watershed week. Trump is in big trouble.
Trump's in a lot of trouble.
It's a sign of a terrified old man who feels the
Walls
Closing in.
The walls
are increasingly
closing in on him.
tonight. The walls
Are closing in.
today changed everything. This is the beginning
Of the end.
Today, the biggest
Tipping point for the Trump administration. What a historic day. The bombshells.
He's underwater.
September.
He feels
The walls closing in.
turning point.
We may be at a tipping point.
It's the beginning of
The end.
The beginning.
of the end.
Another bombshell.
Bombshell. Bombshell.
Bombshell.
Bombshell.
Bombshell.
bombshell. This is a bombshell.
It is.
Oh, man. Yeah, so first of all, if you're a journalist in the mainstream media that still has an ounce of credibility or decency left or self-respect, if you want to know why people don't believe you and your profession is taking it, this is why. It's because you've got other people in your profession that are just terrible. They're awful. That's number one. But they have no credibility here. You know, they have absolutely no credibility in telling you what these witnesses are saying. None. Zero. The witness confirmed this. And the fact is, there's plenty of evidence out there that this was on substance a disaster for Democrats, but it doesn't matter because the deep state, they want to impeach this guy. But you know what? If the president has his way, and they do have a Senate trial, Adam Schiff will be put under oath, I bet. And I think the Senate would have to call Hunter and Joe Biden in to testify as well. Can you imagine that? Do you think the Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats really want that to happen? We're going to take a break. Don't go anywhere. Coming up at the bottom of the hour, we've got Arkansas economist Dr. Michael Packo is with us, then Congressman Bruce Westerman about an hour from now. Don't go anywhere.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work we're doing right here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Conduitforcommerce.org.
Representative Murdoch, Representative Hollowell, these are your senators and your representatives now. You call on them and they're going to help you, guarantee it. And Senator English, I saw you out there too. Thank you for being here as well.
As we speak, Beijing is employing a whole-of-government approach, using political, economic, and military tools as well as propaganda to advance its influence and benefit its interests in the United States.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work we're doing right here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Conduitforcommerce.org.
Representative Murdoch, Representative Hollowell.
As we speak, Beijing is employing a whole-of-government approach, using political, economic, and military tools as well as propaganda to advance its influence and benefit its interests in the United States.
And I have wanted to welcome back to Arkansas Chairman Chu. Please give Chairman Chu a round of applause.
China is also applying this power in more proactive ways than ever before.
All right, welcome back. Kevin McCarthy, who is the House Minority Leader, Republican Kevin McCarthy, who actually came to Jonesboro a little while back. I can't remember when that was. My concept of time is so skewed. But he took this photo. McCarthy posts reference an embarrassing incident involving Congressman Swalwell. Kevin McCarthy, this happened on Tuesday when there was a loud farting noise that was made while Swalwell appeared. He did it. He totally did it. And so Representative Kevin McCarthy, given interviews, is standing behind Swalwell and makes a post on Instagram and says this: "The last place you want to stand while giving an interview is Representative Eric, is behind Representative Eric Swalwell." There's the photo. That's pretty funny. Man, there are some hilarious tweets still going around the internet about Eric Swalwell and how he's denying all of this. I think I liked Tim Pool essentially breaking down that there's just no way that somebody, scraped a mug across a desk the exact moment that you paused and then tried to hold back a little laughter. There's a little smirk there where he tries to hold back laughter. Also, all of you Democrats and all of you, hippies that want to chain yourself to trees, this is a Democrat who is in clear violation of the United States Clean Air Act of 1970. We're going to take a break. Don't go anywhere.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work we're doing right here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time.
Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Conduitforcommerce.org.
Influence and interfere in the domestic policy and politics of this country.
Chairman Chu, I got to know as he is the CEO and chairman of Shandong Ruyi Technology Group out of Shandong Province.
Over the past 17 years, China's GDP has grown ninefold. It's become the second largest economy in the world. Much of this success was driven by American investment in China. And the Chinese Communist Party has also used an arsenal of policies inconsistent with free and fair trade, including tariffs, quotas, currency manipulation, forced technology transfer, intellectual property theft, and industrial subsidies that are handed out like candy to foreign investment.
We've been to Shandong Province a number of times since I've been governor. We've called on people, and Chairman Chu gave us the opportunity to meet with him at Ruyi, at their technology group there in Shandong, and saw his incredible facility. We asked him to visit Arkansas. He did. So, Chairman Chu, we're delighted to have you here. I'm excited about signing this agreement with you, and I welcome you to Arkansas.
These policies have built Beijing's manufacturing base at the expense of its competitors, especially the United States of America.
And I wanted to recognize Chairman Li to my right, who is the founder of Sun Paper of Shandong Province in China. I also want to recognize Secretary Ma of Shandong Province.
As President Trump said just this week, in his words, we rebuilt China over the last 25 years.
Last November, as you know, I traveled to Shandong Province. I met with Chairman Li. I toured Sun Paper Company along with Mike Preston. While in China, we signed a letter of intent on behalf of the state of Arkansas with Sun Paper, indicating that Sun Paper wanted to put a major bioproducts mill in South Arkansas,
The Communist Party has set its sights on controlling 90% of the world's most advanced industries, including robotics, biotechnology, and artificial intelligence. To win the commanding heights of the 21st century economy, Beijing has directed its bureaucrats and businesses to obtain American intellectual property, the foundation of our economic leadership, by any means necessary.
Chairman Li and I met yesterday. Chairman Li indicated to me that Sun Paper has selected Arkadelphia in Clark County as the location of a $1 billion bioproducts mill.
Beijing now requires many American businesses to hand over their trade secrets as the cost of doing business in China. It also coordinates and sponsors the acquisition of American firms to gain ownership of their creations. Worst of all, Chinese security agencies have masterminded the wholesale theft of American technology, including cutting-edge military blueprints. And using that stolen technology, the Chinese Communist Party is turning plowshares into swords on a massive scale.
Well, thank you all for joining us via Skype from Beijing this morning. Here in Beijing, it is 10 p.m. in the evening. I've had a very successful trip to China.
China now spends as much on its military as the rest of Asia combined. And Beijing has prioritized capabilities to erode America's military advantages on land, at sea, in the air, and in space.
I've spoken at Tsinghua University here in Beijing, which was a treat for me to speak with young Chinese students about Arkansas and also to talk.
Okay, folks, as promised, we have Dr. Michael Packo back on the line with us. Dr. Packo, thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, good to be with you.
Absolutely. So, folks, if you don't know, if you've been living under a rock, Dr. Packo obviously is an Arkansas economist with UALR, and he likes to, go over the numbers and analyze what comes in. So, Dr. Packo, we got some new numbers this week, didn't we?
Yes, the employment report for October came out this week, so we have a fresh view of how things are going in Arkansas's labor market. The headline was that the unemployment rate was unchanged at 3.5%. But that's kind of a boring headline. There was more interest in the numbers that were underlying that statistic.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. And I've got, by the way, I want to reference your website. We got it pulled up on the screen here, ArkansasEconomist.com. So, folks, you guys need to check this out. If economics is your thing, you want to know what's going on in Arkansas and, nationally, just ArkansasEconomist.com. So, yeah, I see that first headline there. It was steady at 3.5%, but break that down for us a little bit.
Yeah, that's not unusual. The unemployment rate changes very slowly over time. It's a ratio of number of unemployed to the size of the labor force, and the underlying numbers are where the interest is. Here we had, in October, the number of employed Arkansans increased by over 900. That's good news. But the number of unemployed also went up by 689 was the official statistic. So that's not so good news in and of itself. Now, when you combine the two, that means that the entire labor force increased by over 1,600 people, and that's actually a good sign in and of itself. What we're seeing is evidently job opportunities drawing people into the labor force, whether or not they initially or immediately find a new job, the labor force is increasing. And at unemployment rates as low as 3.5%, it's important if we're going to keep seeing any employment growth at all, that we're going to be attracting people into the labor force, either from outside the labor force residents of the state or migrating into the state from elsewhere.
Yeah. And then I see down here we have this payroll employment. What can you tell us about that?
Well, the payroll employment is usually the more interesting aspect of the monthly report. It tells us the breakdown of where the jobs are by industry. And I was a little bit heartened to see this time around that manufacturing was very strong in October, up 1.9%. That's important to me because I had just come out with my forecast for the state last week, where I emphasized that manufacturing's recovery is a positive indicator, and that I expect that to continue to help drive Arkansas's economy forward over the next year to two. So it's good to see that was reinforced. So actually in October we had strong growth in construction, manufacturing, the goods-producing industries. Continue to see some disappointing weakness in the service-providing sectors, in financial services, health services. So those have been important drivers of growth over the past few years, but over the past few months have shown some slowdown.
We're talking again with, Arkansas economist Dr. Michael Packo. Michael, what can you tell us about this other, I don't know if we've gotten to talk about Arkansas's GDP this month, but I see this other post here from the 7th, and did that come out at the beginning of November?
Yeah. So this would have been the first week in November. We got the latest reading on Arkansas GDP in the second quarter of the year. So it was 1.8% growth, right at the midpoint of all the states in the country. A little bit lower than the U.S. growth rate of 2%, but right in there, commensurate with our population growth and the overall expansion of the economy. So it was kind of we're still growing right along with the rest of the nation kind of report that we got on GDP.
I see here, though, you write right below this map we've got shown on the screen here. Over the past 5 years, Arkansas's growth rate has persistently fallen short of the national average. Why do you think that is?
Well, in part it's the mix of industries we have. And a slower population growth rate accounts for part of it.
Okay.
That's kind of a vicious cycle, a double-edged sword. When you have job growth, you get population growth. But when population growth is slow, you don't need as much job growth to employ the population. So that's part of the difference. But we suffered a real decline in manufacturing employment over the past decade, and I think that's a big part of the adjustment that the Arkansas economy has been having to go through. Seeing the sectors that are growing are service-providing sectors, mostly in the metropolitan areas, and we've been losing a lot of manufacturing and other goods-producing jobs all around the state. So that's inhibited our growth. But I think that period of realignment may be coming to a close, having wound down, and we're going to see more balanced growth going forward. At least that's what my forecast calls for.
Yeah.
I expect that the manufacturing employment will continue to grow slowly, but on an upward trajectory, and the service-providing sectors will pick up their pace of employment growth as well. So you can see that the gap between U.S. and Arkansas GDP growth has been narrowing over the past couple of years, and I expect that to continue.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I certainly that certainly hope so. I've been listening to some different folks making political points in across the state, and one of them that I really never think about is, it's great to have 1.8% gross domestic product growth. That's fantastic. But if you're running a race, you know what I mean, and and the other competitors around you are going faster than you are, in order to ever catch up to them, we've got to really set the bar pretty high if we ever wanted to catch some of these states that were lagging behind. Is that right?
Well, that's right. Per capita income, for instance, about 80% of the national average. It's been creeping up from maybe 78% a few years back. But there's still a long way to go to bring the standard of living in Arkansas up to the nationwide average. We're a relatively low-income state, and that's reflected in other measures of economic activity as well. So, yeah, we'd like to see growth, certainly in a per capita sense, faster than surrounding states, so that we can kind of catch up with the national average. That's, I think, at least an implicit goal of most of the politicians around the state, is to see that convergence take place.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, speaking of politicians, I know I brought it up and you just referenced it, but hey, I've got to get a question in here about because of your affiliation with the Libertarian Party. Outside your roles as an economist, I thought I would ask if you thought this was pretty interesting, where the Democrats have a candidate that files, and then they the Senate candidate Mahoney drops out of the race, and then the Libertarian Party was like, well, there is another candidate in the race. There will be another candidate, because the Libertarians get overlooked so often.
Yeah. Well, hey, let me change my hat here for a minute. Take off the economist hat, but the political one. But that certainly has been a very interesting development. The headlines were, of course, that the race was now over, that suddenly there was going to be no opponent. But, hey, there is a Libertarian in the race. And, I think overall, you have to say that at least a positive prospect for Arkansas to have a choice on the ballot. You'd think that would be a positive thing, rather than just, our senator will automatically go on to serve another 6 years. That just seems rather anti-democratic. I certainly hope that the media and the public pay attention to the fact that there is going to be a race there, and regardless of whether the Democrats will get another candidate on the ballot, Ricky Harrington Jr. is the candidate of the Libertarian Party, and as far as everything goes, will be on the ballot next November.
That's it really is historic that there will be a likely a Libertarian on the ballot, but there won't be a Democrat, and it's just been a very interesting week or so for the Democratic Party. Dr. Packo, I always appreciate it, sir. Thanks so much for coming on the program and breaking down some of these numbers.
Oh, my pleasure. Hope to talk to you again soon.
All righty. Yes, sir. Folks, back in a minute. Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work we're doing right here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Conduitforcommerce.org.
Talk about the relationship between China and the United States.
China wants nothing less than to push the United States of America from the Western Pacific and attempt to prevent us from coming to the aid of our allies. But they will fail. Beijing is also using its power like never before. Chinese ships routinely patrol around the Senkaku Islands, which are administered by Japan. And while China's leader stood in the Rose Garden at the White House in 2015 and said that his country had, and I quote, no intention to militarize the South China Sea. Today, Beijing has deployed advanced anti-ship and anti-air missiles atop an archipelago of military bases constructed on artificial islands. China's aggression was on display this week when a Chinese naval vessel came within 45 yards of the USS Decatur as it conducted freedom of navigation operations in the South China Sea, forcing our ship to quickly maneuver to avoid collision. Despite such reckless harassment, the United States Navy will continue to fly, sail, and operate wherever international law allows and our national interests demand. We will not be intimidated, and we will not stand down.
And we'll be calling on multiple prospects in China, as well as continuing our relationship with Sun Paper in Shandong Province.
In recent years, China has taken a sharp U-turn toward control and oppression of its own people. Today, China has built an unparalleled surveillance state, and it's growing more expansive and intrusive, often with the help of U.S. technology. And when it comes to religious freedom, a new wave of persecution is crashing down on Chinese Christians, Buddhists, and Muslims. Last month, Beijing shut down one of China's largest underground churches. Across the country, authorities are tearing down crosses, burning Bibles, and imprisoning believers. And Beijing has now reached a deal with the Vatican that gives the avowedly atheist Communist Party a direct role in appointing Catholic bishops. For China's Christians, these are desperate times.
So, do you like him as a candidate?
I think he's brought a lot to the table. It's not my message. You know, I worry about the party in terms of expanding our base and what the message does to our recruitment of Hispanics, outreach to minorities. And so you've got to worry about the fall election and whether this is a message that's going to carry in Michigan, Ohio, and Florida, and those states that we need to carry.
The American people deserve to know. In response to the strong stand that President Trump has taken, Beijing is pursuing a comprehensive and coordinated campaign to undermine support for the president, our agenda, and our nation's most cherished ideals.
I think you've got to listen to what he says and how he conducts himself. And I don't know that he would be that different from what he is now in negotiating with Vladimir Putin. So,
you think that's a good thing or a bad thing?
No, I don't think it's a good thing. You know, we need people who, in the presidency, that understand how the world works, understands that there's a time for bluster and there's a time for reason.
The Chinese Communist Party is rewarding or coercing American businesses, movie studios, universities, think tanks, scholars, journalists, and local, state, and federal officials.
And then, Chairman, you'll look out in the audience and you'll see multiple members of the governor's cabinet. We're also here to support you. You'll see multiple members of the state legislative assembly. They're here to support you, and specifically Senator Caldwell, Senator Ingram, Representative Murdoch, Representative Hollowell. These are your senators and your representatives now. You call on them, and they're going to help you. Guarantee it. And Senator English, I saw you out there too. Thank you for being here as well.
As we speak, Beijing is employing a whole-of-government approach, using political, economic...
Man, that last comment is just absolutely ridiculous, isn't it, folks? Those of you who watch it online, that last comment is just maddening when you think about it. You know, I was just thinking about the Georgia Pacific. You go look at all these old reports about Georgia Pacific and, the Arkansas company closing. Well, I mean, it's Georgia Pacific, but it's... This was back in June. Georgia Pacific to lay off 655 workers by closing Crossett and Hope facilities. Roby Brock reporting that on talkbusiness.net. So back this summer, we found out that was going to happen. Georgia Pacific, let's see, what is it? It's a pulp mill, right? Is that what it is? Our Crossett employees have worked hard to safely and productively manage our operations there, and in recent years, we have invested significantly in our operations. However, we have decided that the required investments needed for the bleached board machines, pulp mill, and wood yard to sustain the operation long-term are not economically viable. Yeah. You compare that with, this company, existing company in Arkansas, having to shut down, and compare that with then courting the Chinese to get a pulp mill of some kind down in Arkadelphia. I don't know, man. There's something not right about that. What I mean by that is, it's like you're going to get. I mean, I don't agree with picking winners and losers and the government giving money. But if you're going to give money to somebody, why not give money to an American company? Why give it to a Chinese company? Why not try to maintain what we have? Just something weird about that. What if, and this is an example of moderating a position, okay, of at least looking at a problem and saying, okay, maybe economic development in terms of the big business getting all this corporate welfare from the government, maybe that's a bad thing, and there's plenty of studies to show that it is. But assuming that it's never going to go away, all right, why wouldn't we as Arkansans want that money that's being spent to companies? Why wouldn't we want it to be awarded to companies who are already here in Arkansas? Has that even been suggested? Has it even been tried where we have this policy? And then from there, before you look for foreign investment, you try to look for an American company to move into your state. But can you imagine if there were economic development dollars and the policy was they're only going to help current operations expand? Wouldn't that be a little bit more of a nationalistic approach to economic development if the government insists that it has to be involved, versus a mentality that says that Arkansas is dependent on foreign investment? Not that foreign investment is necessarily bad. Communist investments are bad. Totalitarian regimes building plants, sending their people here to Arkansas is generally a bad idea. And I would say that if it was Russia or Saudi Arabia opening up plants here, just like I've got a big problem with Saudi Arabia giving money to a bunch of American universities. Specifically, this probably was 18 years ago, at one time $20 million to the U of A. Saudi Arabia, at least at the time, was the largest exporter of the Wahhabist brand of terrorism. I'm just telling you, can you imagine if the headline was governor announcing plants to open because of Saudi Arabia investment or Russian investment? Would we think that's okay? Why is China okay? Because for some reason we just totally underestimate them and overestimate our ability to resist the communist Chinese, i.e. the NBA, bowing down to what communist Chinese want when it comes to freedom of speech. Over what? Money. And that brings us to the governor's law firm and what we've been talking about all week. That the governor's law firm that his son is supposedly running has the same Chinese clients that have gotten Arkansas taxpayer money to move here. And that looks very bad. It looks dishonest. It looks unethical. Some think it looks even worse than that. Some question the legality of this. And in the meantime, where we have this legitimate question of credibility out of the governor's office, we have this new campaign that's been started by the governor, and Conduit for Action has a good write-up on this. Headline, Issue 1 will revoke promised sales tax relief. This happened last week. Governor Asa Hutchinson last week kicked off the campaign for issue number 1 coming up in 2020. We'll be voting on it. If passed, it will revoke the sales tax relief you were promised by law. Issue number 1 will appear on your ballot in November 2020, and if passed, it will impose a permanent 0.5% sales tax to be used for highways and roads. And it's going to be in our Constitution, by the way. If passed, this tax will be in addition to the... Well, hang on. Is it... At least I heard that. I can't remember. Does that mean it will be in the Constitution? Or is it just going to change the statute? Honestly, I can't remember. It does say permanent, though, right? Permanent 1/2 sales tax to be used for highways. If passed, this tax will be in addition to the gasoline and diesel fuel tax increases that have already been passed earlier this year. Now, to sell the tax, the governor is busy saying that Issue 1 is not a new tax, but a continuation of an existing tax. Spin all you want, Governor. Issue 1 does nothing to continue the current extra sales tax. Instead, it revokes tax relief we were promised by law. It imposes a new tax once the current tax expires. The existing tax is for paying off the debt for 4-lane highway construction and improvement under a plan for specific projects. That is not what Issue 1 is about. And you gotta go back to 2012 when you realize that people of Arkansas voted for this tax in 2012 with the understanding that it would sunset. And now we're like, are you sure? Politicians, this is obviously a note that you can never bind future legislatures from taking away the tax relief that they promise, from taking away the sunset clauses that they promise. Are you sure that you really wanted it to sunset? We wanted to make sure, because we know Arkansas is full of a bunch of liberals and they love tax increases, so we wanted to make sure that they're sure that they wanted it to sunset. Saying yes, and listening to the governor and saying yes means your promised tax relief will be revoked and you will be stuck with a permanent tax. Saying no to the governor and no to Issue 1 means you will get the tax relief you were promised once the debt is paid off. And that tax would expire in 2022. Folks, we've got one more hour coming your way next. Congressman Bruce Westerman coming up at 7:33. Don't go anywhere.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work we're doing right here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Conduitforcommerce.org.
As we speak, Beijing is employing a whole-of-government approach, using political, economic, and military tools as well as propaganda to advance its influence and benefit its interests in the United States.
And I have wanted to welcome back to Arkansas Chairman Chu. Please give Chairman Chu a round of applause.
China is also applying this power in more proactive ways than ever before to exert influence and interfere in the domestic policy and politics of this country.
Chairman Chu, I got to know as he is the CEO and chairman of Shandong Ruyi Technology Group out of Shandong Province.
Over the past 17 years, China's GDP has grown ninefold. It's become the second largest economy in the world. Much of this success was driven by American investment in China. And the Chinese Communist Party has also used an arsenal of policies inconsistent with free and fair trade, including tariffs, quotas, currency manipulation, forced technology transfer, intellectual property theft, and industrial subsidies that are handed out like candy to foreign investment.
We've been to Shandong Province a number of times since I've been governor. We've called on people, and Chairman Chu gave us the opportunity to meet with him at Ruyi, at their technology group there in Shandong, and saw his incredible facility. We asked him to visit Arkansas. He did. So Chairman Chu, we're delighted to have you here. I'm excited about signing this agreement with you, and I welcome you to Arkansas.
These policies have built Beijing's manufacturing base at the expense of its competitors, especially the United States of America.
And I wanted to recognize Chairman Lee to my right, who is the founder of Sun Paper of Shandong Province in China. I also want to recognize Secretary Ma of Shandong Province.
As President Trump said just this week, in his words, we rebuilt China over the last 25 years.
Last November, as you know, I traveled to Shandong Province. I met with Chairman Lee. I toured Sun Paper Company along with Mike Preston. While in China, we signed a letter of intent on behalf of the state of Arkansas with Sun Paper, indicating that Sun Paper wanted to put a major bioproducts mill in South Arkansas, in Arkansas.
The Communist Party has set its sights on controlling 90% of the world's most advanced industries, including robotics, biotechnology, and artificial intelligence. To win the commanding heights of the 21st century economy, Beijing has directed its bureaucrats and businesses to obtain American intellectual property, the foundation of our economic leadership, by any means necessary.
Chairman Lee and I met yesterday. Chairman Lee indicated to me that Sun Paper has selected Arkadelphia in Clark County as the location of a $1 billion bioproducts mill.
Beijing now requires many American businesses to hand over their trade secrets as the cost of doing business in China. It also coordinates and sponsors the acquisition of American firms to gain ownership of their creations. Worst of all, Chinese security agencies have masterminded the whole.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Hello, welcome, hour number 2. Welcome back to the program. 870-275-9799 is the telephone number if you want to contribute to the program. The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. It is a Johnny Cash Friday as well for our terrestrial radio affiliates. And I want to thank you. I want to thank you for starting the beginning of your weekend with us here. And just a reminder, especially if you look at the Conduit News Facebook page, we've got a little video running talking about big changes coming. It doesn't say any more than that, just big changes coming. Same great news, same great insights. But we're excited about that, and we're going to be announcing that in the weeks to come, and so you definitely are going to want to stay tuned for that. But this is going to be a very efficient way for us to continue to give you what we're giving you, which is the news on a daily basis. Telephone number 870-275-9799. Okay, did anybody see this back in November the 7th in the Northwest Arkansas Democrat Gazette? Or maybe I guess this was in the this was in the Arkansas Democrat Gazette. Dr. David Mitchell, who's been a guest on this program before, who is the director, the head of the Arkansas Center for Research and Economics at the University of Central Arkansas, wrote an op-ed, okay? And this is what he said. Listen to this. And this fell through the cracks. I didn't see this. How would your family deal with an unexpected drop in your income? We've all heard the expression, save it for a rainy day. When your income falls, you still need groceries and rent. State governments face the same problems, but when a recession hits, state government faces an additional challenge. Governments have more expenses during a recession since more people qualify for programs such as unemployment insurance, Medicaid, and other social services. One issue that economists are in broad agreement upon is that the economy cycles through growth and contractions. The last recession, the Great Recession, ended in June 2009. The current expansion is over 10 years long, one of the longest expansions in U.S. history. The recent measures of economic health, like inverted yield curves on bond interest rates and stock market drops, are reasons to worry that a recession could come sooner rather than later. I don't know when, but a storm is coming, he writes. That's why prudent household budgeters set aside savings over the long term, a rainy day fund to cushion against the unexpected shocks and setbacks that inevitably come. The same is true for states like Arkansas that in good times have policies in place to bolster their rainy day funds. Think of it as a savings account for the state. How is Arkansas doing in these good economic times? Well, let's just say that the state could be doing much better. Only 2 states, Arkansas and Kansas, lack statutes or other rules that ensure that budget reserves are replenished after they are drawn down and continue to be replenished until the next emergency, according to a recent report from the Volcker Alliance. It gave Arkansas a C on its rainy day report card, and only 2 other states got a lower grade. According to the Pew Charitable Trust's state rainy day funds in 2017, Arkansas is one of only 6 states that doesn't have meaningful deposit rules for its rainy day funds. This is happening at a time when many states are bolstering funds and tightening rainy day spending rules to an extent not seen since the Great Recession. Arkansas only has enough rainy day funds to pay for about 8 days of spending, according to Pew's article. Okay? Again, this was from November of this year. November 7th is when this article came out. Only 8 days. That's crazy if you think about it. So it keeps going on. So only 8 days. This is happening at a time when many states are bolstering their funds, tightening rainy day spending rules to an extent not seen since the Great Recession. All right. So while the state had about $150 million in its long-term reserve fund in July, these funds are often spent on projects that have nothing to do with long-term budget stability. According to the Bureau of Legislative Research, from 2009 to 2017, more than $261 million was deposited, and during this period of economic growth, over $224 million was released or spent. Back in May, $5 million from the state's rainy day fund was committed to the Arkansas Arts Center. Funds have also been used to support the state fair, community colleges, and to fight illegal drugs. These projects have merit, but they don't qualify as rainy day expenditures. When the economy heads south and tax receipts begin to dip, Arkansas taxpayers will not be clamoring to fund the state fair or the Arts Center. During a recession, voters will want to prioritize mandated Medicaid spending and crucial education funding. Medicaid spending tends to increase during a recession as more people become eligible because of hardships. Pew observed in a recent release report, Rainy Day Funds in 2019, are states ready for the next recession? Researchers warn that because state revenue growth relies today on more volatile sources, stock market gains, or self-employment taxes, policymakers may need to plan for steeper declines by accruing more reserves. Again, Dr. David Mitchell says, my 2016 research, The Determinants of Severity of State Fiscal Crises, published in the academic journal Public Budgeting and Finance with Dean Stransel, a senior research fellow at the O'Neill Center for Global Markets and Freedom at SMU, suggests that both deposits and withdrawals should be based on specific economic conditions. So he goes on. So why am I telling you all of this? Okay, bear with me here, folks. Again, this was November of this month. I'm sorry, November 7th of this year. Well, today, in the Arkansas Democrat Gazette, the governor has responded directly to Dr. Mitchell and even says that Dr. Mitchell's wrong, that he has mischaracterized the state's plans. Headline, Asa Hutchinson prepared for rain, state in good economic shape. This is what's called a clap back, if you will. Clap back. Don't you talk bad about my economy. Clap back. Don't talk bad about my spending. I'm going to clap back. I'll tell you what's so funny. It's really sensitive. I mean, Asa Hutchinson is not a fiscal conservative because of his spending habits, and that will be a historical fact when this is all said and done. But now you're talking about the rainy day fund. Now, this is not the first time, as I'm going to show, Conduit has covered the rainy day funds, the long-term reserve funds, and how confusing all of this is. We're going to give you that context too. But let's listen to let's read what the governor has to say. Recently, Dr. David Mitchell from the Arkansas Center for Research and Economics authored a guest column in this newspaper titled Rainy Days Ahead. Dr. Mitchell's column mischaracterized the state's current financial situation and ignored the substantial reserves Arkansas has built up over time. When I took office, the long-term reserve fund was empty. Today, it has a balance of approximately $152.5 million and is expected to grow larger. This is in addition to the restricted reserve fund, the general allotment reserve fund, the Medicaid trust fund, the public school fund, and other set-aside funds we have available to call upon if needed. Translation, nothing to see here. The government is telling you, through the government's head, the head of the chief executive is saying, no, that this independent economic research firm over here, they don't know what they're talking about, but I do, and he has mischaracterized our financial situation. Everything's fine, nothing to see here. Contrary to Dr. Mitchell's assertion, Asa Hutchinson writes, the long-term reserve fund has never funded any projects. There are strict guardrails which prevent the spending of the long-term reserve fund. That fund was created to protect against the next economic downturn, and that fund has not been used for any of the projects he referenced. Perhaps Dr. Mitchell is confusing the long-term reserve fund with the general improvement fund, which for years allowed public dollars to be spent on projects with no oversight or accountability. That fund no longer exists. Actually, it did have oversight and accountability. It just didn't have enough of it, and what was in place was just kind of a rubber stamp, much like when the governor wants to spend money, he just has to get the Arkansas Legislative Council to approve it, and most of the time they do. It's just a rubber stamp. But let's stop right here because we need to go back in time. You see, there has been some legislative changes that the governor's not telling you about in this piece. I mean, why would he? It would be very confusing. There's been some legislative changes with the long-term reserve fund and the rainy day fund that we're going to re-educate you guys on. We've covered it before. Conduit for Action has covered it and wrote about this back in 2017. The headline, ASA's shell game and the effort to increase his slush fund. Now, folks, I just want to take this moment and remind you, you will not get this information anywhere else, and this is the work that we do, and it's work that is extremely valuable for times like this. Because we're trying to be the institutionalized memory of what goes on at the Marble Palace that many people in power would have you forget. Asa's shell game and the effort to increase his slush fund. Now, why the shell game was noticed. Okay, you'll have to bear with me here, but the governor is saying that what Dr. Mitchell is saying isn't true. He's saying everything's fine and that the projects he referenced didn't get spent on those, so he's wrong. Okay, let me tell you why this is a lot more gray than you think. Governor Asa Hutchinson wants to take $105 million. Again, this was back in 2017. $105 million out of a state trust fund for health issues and put it in the long-term reserve fund. The governor claimed he needed the money transferred so Arkansas would have enough in reserve to help Arkansas's bond rating. Now, let me just reinsert here. Do you guys remember this? I actually think we had to do that. We did that in a special session, and I think we had to do it to save our bond rating, not to help our bond rating. You know what I mean? Not to get a higher one, but to maintain what we had. Conduit for Action, though, saw that the money was going into the governor's discretionary spending account, a slush fund. The governor can use the money in the fund as long as it gets approval of one legislative committee, the Legislative Council. That is much easier. It's a much easier route to spending discretionary money than having to get an appropriation bill approved by 3/4 of the House of Representatives and 3/4 of the Senate. Then, Monday, May 1st, 2017, the governor claimed he needed the money to be transferred to the long-term reserve fund to use for economic development. Which is it, a fund to build up a reserve or a spending account? Now, folks, this all happened. Okay, this all happened. Conduit for Action pointed out that the long-term reserve fund is the governor's discretionary fund for his priorities. The fund used to be called the Rainy Day Fund until 2016, when the name was changed to the Long-Term Reserve Fund. There was no change in how the fund could be used. The governor's spokesman at that time in 2017, J.R. Davis, took exception with Conduit's analysis and tweeted, quote, "Long-Term Reserve Fund is completely separate from the Rainy Day Fund, an important fact that should not be neglected." His assertion is both a deception and has an element of truth in it. This is going to get confusing, but once you see the shell game, you'll understand. Mr. Davis's, again, 2017, his statement is a deception in that it gives the reader the impression the long-term reserve fund is not the governor's slush fund, but it is. In a sneaky way, the deception also has an element of truth in it. Earlier this year, a new fund was created, reusing the name Rainy Day Fund, but having nothing to do with the purpose of the old Rainy Day Fund, which was now renamed Long-Term Reserve Fund. Told you this would get confusing. Okay? So, and feel free to go over this yourself, but you had the old Rainy Day Fund, which was the fund established to give then-Governor Mike Beebe some discretionary funds for emergencies and his priorities. In the first 18 months of the Hutchinson administration, Governor Hutchinson spent more money from this fund than former Governor Beebe did in 6 years. Governor Hutchinson admitted the fund is for emergencies and special needs he determines and for his priorities that aren't included in the state's general revenue budget. And these are all sourced at the bottom of the article. As the public became aware of this spending, the governor was increasingly criticized for using the Rainy Day Fund, the old Rainy Day Fund, as a slush fund. So they renamed it the Long-Term Reserve Fund. In 2016, without explanation, the Rainy Day Fund was renamed the Long-Term Reserve Fund. The name change was tucked into Section 15 of a bill concerning highway funding, a place where few would notice. With no reason for the fund being renamed and no changes in the fund's use, we assume it was done as a way to hide the fund for a while. The media would still be looking for discretionary spending from the Rainy Day Fund, which had been renamed, so they're in the dark. Then there was a new fund created using the old name, Rainy Day Fund. Earlier this year, the governor and the legislature reused the name Rainy Day Fund for something completely different and to hide something else. In previous regular sessions, there would be a General Improvement Fund, GIF. We know this, extremely controversial. And see, the governor, in his rebuke of Dr. David Mitchell, what did he say? Maybe you're confused. Maybe you think that this was the General Improvement Fund, but the General Improvement Fund no longer exists. But we remember GIF, very controversial. One former legislator pleading guilty to taking kickbacks for directing GIF money to certain entities. We know all this. This year, there was no bill called General Improvement Fund distribution back in 2017. In its place was the newly created fund called the Rainy Day Fund. The new fund included the GIF money, plus some other money, primarily from settlements received by the Attorney General. This scheme accomplished two things. First, if you were looking for GIF distribution, it was going to be hard to find because the new name, Rainy Day Fund. Second, if you were looking for the governor's discretionary spending using the old name Rainy Day Fund, you would instead find this new Rainy Day Fund, which is the GIF distribution. The conclusion, all the way back in 2017, the renaming of the old Rainy Day Fund to the Long-Term Reserve Fund helped hide the governor's discretionary spending fund from scrutiny. The creation of the new fund, reusing the name Rainy Day Fund, helped hide the controversial GIF distribution bill. Again, you have to have context when you're going over these complex issues of the Marble Palace, and you have to have a pretty good memory to do it. If you want more on this particular subject, you can check out yet another article up at Conduit for Action from 2016, Rainy Day Fund Deception Part 1, if you want a little bit even more history on this interesting topic. What do you guys think? Do you believe Dr. David Mitchell with the Arkansas Center for Research and Economics about the state's preparedness for a potential financial downturn? Or do you, and by the way, not Dr. David Mitchell, but other organizations that are ranking Arkansas's preparedness? Or do you believe Governor Asa Hutchinson? Which one do you believe? We'll be back in just a moment.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work we're doing right here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Conduitforcommerce.org.
Sale theft of American technology, including cutting-edge military blueprints. And using that stolen technology, the Chinese Communist Party is turning plowshares into swords on a massive scale.
Well, thank you all for joining us via Skype from Beijing this morning. Here in Beijing, it is 10 p.m. in the evening. I've had a very successful trip to China.
China now spends as much on its military as the rest of Asia combined. And Beijing has prioritized capabilities to erode America's military advantages on land, at sea, in the air, and in space.
I've spoken at Tsinghua University here in Beijing, which was a treat for me to speak with young Chinese students about Arkansas, and also to talk about the relationship between China and the United States.
China wants nothing less than to push the United States of America from the Western Pacific and attempt to prevent us from coming to the aid of our allies. But they will fail. Beijing is also using its power like never before. Chinese ships routinely patrol around the Senkaku Islands, which are administered by Japan. And while China's leader stood in the Rose Garden at the White House in 2015 and said that his country had, and I quote, no intention to militarize the South China Sea. Today, Beijing has deployed advanced anti-ship and anti-air missiles atop an archipelago of military bases constructed on artificial islands. China's aggression was on display this week when a Chinese naval vessel came within 45 yards of the USS Decatur as it conducted freedom of navigation operations in the South China Sea, forcing our ship to quickly maneuver to avoid collision. Despite such reckless harassment, the United States Navy will continue to fly, sail, and operate wherever international law allows and our national interests demand. We will not be intimidated, and we will not stand down.
And we'll be calling on multiple prospects in China, as well as continuing our relationship with Sun Paper in Shandong Province.
In recent years, China has taken a sharp U-turn toward control and oppression of its own people. Today,
here's the thing. In this piece, the governor goes on in this piece. Perhaps Dr. Mitchell is confusing the long-term reserve fund with a general improvement fund, which for years allowed public dollars to be spent on projects with no oversight. He goes on, I have funded numerous projects throughout the state of Arkansas from my discretionary rainy day fund, which was approved by the legislature. Again, that's not the old one. That's the new rainy day fund. If you've been joining us, we've been dissecting what happened in 2017. And what's funny is if you have to do all of that legislative sleight of hand to rename the old rainy day fund, long-term reserve fund, then create a new piece of legislation to create a new separate rainy day fund. If you have to do all of that legislative sleight of hand and trickery and hide it in section 15 of a bill, and then once you know that, it basically discredits everything the governor says about his own rainy day funds. When somebody's criticizing it, now he's defending it. Once you know how we got to this point, you start to think, well, where there's smoke, there's fire. You know what I mean? Where there's smoke, there's fire. You could also apply that to the other big news about Arkansas this week, with the Communist Chinese and the law firm and everything else. Folks, we'll be right back with Congressman Bruce Westerman, a Republican, representing Arkansas's 4th congressional district. Always great to talk to Bruce, and we're going to have a lot to talk about. Have you seen this garbage that's going on up in D.C.? Back in a minute.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work we're doing right here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce. the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Conduitforcommerce.org.
It's growing more expansive and intrusive, often with the help of U.S. technology. And when it comes to religious freedom, a new wave of persecution is crashing down on Chinese Christians, Buddhists, and Muslims. Last month, Beijing shut down one of China's largest underground churches. Across the country, authorities are tearing down crosses, burning Bibles, and imprisoning believers. And Beijing has now reached a deal with the Vatican that gives the avowedly atheist Communist Party a direct role in appointing Catholic bishops. For China's Christians, these are desperate times.
So, do you like him as a candidate?
I think he's brought a lot to the table. It's not my message. I worry about the party in terms of expanding our base and what the message does to our recruitment of Hispanics, outreach to minorities. And so you've got to worry about the fall election and whether this is a message that's going to carry in Michigan, Ohio, and Florida, and those states that we need to carry.
The American people deserve to know. In response to the strong stand that President Trump has taken, Beijing is pursuing a comprehensive and coordinated campaign to undermine support for the president, our agenda, and our nation's most cherished ideals.
I think you've got to listen to what he says and how he conducts himself, and I don't know that he would be that different from what he is now in negotiating with Vladimir Putin. So,
you think that's a good thing or a bad thing?
No, I don't think it's a good thing. We need people who, in the presidency, that understand how the world works, understands that there's a time for bluster and there's a time for reason.
The Chinese Communist Party is rewarding or coercing American businesses, movie studios, universities, think tanks, scholars, journalists, and local, state, and federal officials.
And then, Chairman, you'll look out in the audience and you'll see multiple members of the governor's cabinet. We're also here to support you. You'll see multiple members of the state legislative assembly. They're here to support you, and specifically Senator Caldwell, Senator Ingram, Representative Murdoch, Representative Hollowell. These are your senators and your representatives now. You call on them and they're going to help you, guarantee it. And Senator English, I saw you out there too. Thank you for being here as well.
As we speak, Beijing is employing a whole-of-government approach, using political, economic, and military tools as well as propaganda to advance its influence and benefit its
All right,
interests
folks.
In the United States.
Welcome back. Thanks so much for being with us. It is this Johnny Cash Friday, and we've got with us, once again, Congressman Bruce Westerman is on the line. Bruce, how are you, sir?
Doing well, and nothing like starting off the day with a good Johnny Cash song. And that's a good one, too.
That is a really good one. You're exactly right. So how are you guys making it up there, Bruce? Y'all surviving with all the Democrats' craziness?
I'm doing fantastic, Paul, because I got on a Delta airplane and came back to Arkansas last night. So it's much better here than it is in D.C., I can tell you that.
Well,
and looking forward to Thanksgiving and a little break away from the craziness, but it will quickly resume as soon as we get back.
So are they going to impeach him? You think the Democrats are going to actually impeach him?
Yeah, I think they will. I think they've gotten themselves so far down the rat hole. I don't think they've got any choice but to impeach him, and they're going to do that. I mean, people call it a sham, and I think that's about as accurate as you can get on what they're doing. You got Adam Schiff running the Schiff show, and no Republican witnesses. The president has no one on his legal team represented there. And they're doing this in the Intelligence Committee. You don't do impeachment work in the Intelligence Committee unless you're Pelosi and Schiff. But this is being driven by those freshman members and the extremists in their party, which seems to be more and more people all the time. I think Speaker Pelosi, for all her faults, I think she's smart enough to know that this isn't going to play out well for them. And it's an election year. It's overturning the will of the voters. It's one of the most serious things Congress can do, and they're really making a mockery out of it, as far as I can tell. And people are seeing what the headlines for the mainstream media right now. But remember, when this goes to the Senate, they will call Republican witnesses. There will be a whole lot more stuff come out in the open when it goes to the Senate, I believe.
So, I mean, they're to the point where, you think Nancy Pelosi knows, like you said, she knows that the polling for this is doing bad. Independents are now swinging to the Republican side on this, according to some polling. Republicans say that their internal polling is showing the same thing. But is Nancy afraid of being devoured by the base? I mean, if they were to not vote to impeach the president, their base would absolutely revolt, wouldn't they?
Oh yeah. They're like spoiled kids. They will. They want their way. I think they've grown up in a culture where they've always got their way, and by golly, this is what they want, and they're going to get it. And give this to them. They've developed a lot of leverage, and not only are they manipulating Pelosi. Look at the Democratic candidates for president. I mean, right down the line, they're falling in line with the Green New Deal, Medicare for all, all these crazy socialist ideas that they're pushing, and they're being embraced by their field of presidential candidates. I can't help but think that there's people in the party breathing a sigh of relief that everybody's talking about impeachment and not talking about what these Democrat presidential candidates are talking about on the campaign trail.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I saw where the president tweeted something about if they do impeach him and they do have an actual trial in the Senate, that the Republicans are going to, or the president was urging the Republicans to call people like Adam Schiff and have him now sworn in under oath to testify about the whistleblower, and because at first he said he didn't know the whistleblower, and then of course we found out that wasn't true. Now he's denying that he ever had contact with the whistleblower again. So do you think that the Senate Republicans will actually do that, Bruce?
I'm not sure they can do that.
Okay.
I don't know legally if you can force a member of Congress to testify, but they certainly can call the whistleblower and anybody else they want to come in. And Mitch McConnell he's a very smart, strategic person. And have you heard him saying anything lately? I get this impression he's somewhere kind of putting some plan together. And also you got this IG report that's being worked on. So I think there's a lot more out there, and all the focus is on what Schiff and his cronies are doing in the House, rather than and there's being a lot of work done in other areas, is what I believe.
You're right. You haven't heard anything really that much from Mitch McConnell, and I really hope that that's the case. I mean, I hope that this is, and the president did tweet, they're going to be on our turf pretty soon, and I think we're on the same page, Congressman Westerman, because you're mentioning the IG report, and I think you and I both know the stuff that's contained in that report, the declassification of those FISA warrants and that process, it's going to expose everything that we kind of already know, the basic outline of what they've done, and then of course the media is going to ignore it. But I think at some point, you're going to have criminal indictments potentially coming from this. I mean, I know that's what everybody's whispering about. Have you heard those things as well?
Well, what I can tell you is, a lot of times you're your kind of gut feeling and the first hunch you have tells you a lot. And I know when I went to the skiff and read the classified information about what happened with the FBI and Steele and the Democrats and the fake dossier and all of that, like my very first impression, the first time I read it, and I went back and reread it to make sure I was seeing, was that, oh my gosh, this is probably worse than Watergate. Like what happened here should never happen in this country. And there's a whole backstory to that too. That I may have talked about it on your show before about the experience of going through having to reauthorize the FISA courts and struggling with the understanding of how those courts have helped prevent terrorist attacks and being told by the FBI and others in the intelligence agencies like how much protection there is in there to make sure that everything's above board and that people's privacy is protected. And then to find out that they abused those FISA courts and FISA warrants to help Hillary Clinton in the 2016 election, that made a big impression on me. I'll put it that way.
Okay.
And I've always said that if there's justice, if there's still justice in this country, somebody's going to pay for what happened with the abuse of the FISA courts and the FISA warrant.
So, how long ago did you read that information, that classified information, Congressman? Do you remember?
I mean, that was before the Mueller report and all of that. I mean, most of that's all. It's all been made public now, but at the time it was all classified and we couldn't talk about it.
I got you. So yeah, and we've got more declassification that even comes since then. That we're now waiting on. I mean, I was just in the first hour, I was replaying an interview that I did back September of last year with Congressman Devin Nunes, who came to Arkansas to campaign for French Hill at that time. And we were sitting there still talking about the FISA. We thought the FISA declass was supposed to happen that week in September, believe it or not. And here we are over a year later, we're still waiting on it. But the fact that you got Senator Lindsey Graham now who's saying that they're going to pursue this in judiciary, they're going to subpoena people as well, and Michael Horowitz, the Inspector General, is supposed to come before his committee, I guess a couple of days after the IG report is supposed to be released now, I think on December 9th. And so we're all very much on the edge of our seats.
Yeah. And, it's what the Democrats were hoping to accomplish by it, or at least the ones that are driving this, they were trying to get rid of Trump. And there's so many clips of them saying things like, we have to impeach him or he'll win re-election, or they were calling for impeachment before he was ever sworn in. I heard there's a video out that just kind of goes through or maybe a national ad out that goes through all the clips in Democrats' own words of how they're abusing the process and how the president needs to be impeached. And that's what it's all about, is preventing him from being reelected in 2020. But now the polls are going in the wrong direction for them, and they've supposedly wrapped up the inquiry. I guess they'll go to the Judiciary Committee now and do the formal impeachment. And I don't know how long that'll take in the Judiciary Committee. But at some point it's going to go to the Senate, and I don't think it's going to play well for them when it does. I don't think it's playing well for them right now.
No, I don't either. I mean, and I think it's pretty clear. Are you pretty confident the folks in Arkansas, for example? I mean, we're not buying that. We're not taking this impeachment inquiry like it's legitimate, right? I mean, I think people in Arkansas are.
I get.
Go ahead.
We get people calling into the office saying you have to vote to impeach him and all that, but the vast majority of people, I don't think, are taking it. I think they're taking it for what it is. I don't think they're watching MSNBC and CNN every day.
I also think they see that the results of the president and his policies, right? I mean, and I mean, I see it now. Of course, I'm a talk radio host, so all I do is read news all day. But I mean, I just see the whole thing as like the draining the swamp. I mean, this is an allergic reaction or an immune system reaction to Donald Trump actually making some systematic changes that we've wanted to see. The American people have been screaming about for decades, and now here's somebody that goes in and actually does it, shakes things up, and guess what? They're trying to remove him from office. That tells me everything I need to know.
And I tell you, the more time I spend in D.C., and I have to be careful the way I say this because it's the capital of our nation. It's got a great history, but when you get off of Capitol Hill and patriotic stuff, I'm becoming to just loathe this place. It's, I mean, you drive around, you see more Mercedes, Audis, Lexus, every luxury vehicle. There's more of them on the street than anywhere else. There's construction cranes everywhere, new buildings going up, and every single bit of that is being financed by taxpayer dollars from across the country. And you've got this massive government machine up there. And no, the last thing they wanted was for somebody like Trump to come in and break that up and mess up their little gig they've got going on. So, yeah, they're going to push back, and they're going to continue pushing back. And they're also pushing out because you're seeing D.C. expand further into Virginia, and you're seeing Virginia turn into Maryland, basically.
Yeah, that was a shocker to see. Virginia is basically being overtaken by the Democrat Party. But like you said, that's what's happening. They're taking our tax dollars and basically enriching themselves. And anytime there's an economic downturn, Washington, D.C. and those counties surrounding, is always an oasis of jobs. And it's just because that's where the government is. And it certainly is a big government. Congressman Bruce Westerman, I always love having you on the program. And I want you to enjoy your time away from that place. And I want you to have a happy and blessed Thanksgiving, sir.
Well, and same to you, Paul. I'm going to do the best I can to do that. I always love Thanksgiving, love being around family and eating all my favorite foods. And then I hope to get out and do a little bit of deer hunting while I'm back here for Thanksgiving.
That's good. Good luck to you, sir. I got an opening weekend. I did get a 9-point. It was the biggest deer I've ever gotten, and so I've
congratulations.
Thank you. I've still got the itch, though. You know what I mean? Like I'm gonna have to go back as well. But yeah, good luck to you. I hope you get a big one.
Yeah, a lot of people will be out duck hunting here soon too. So we've got a lot to be thankful for, and we're very blessed, not only in this country but especially here in Arkansas.
All right, Congressman Bruce Westerman. Happy Thanksgiving, sir. We'll do it again next month.
Yeah, you too, Paul.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Folks, going to take a break. It's always great to talk to Congressman Westerman. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back in just a moment.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work we're doing right here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Conduitforcommerce.org.
As we speak, Beijing is employing a whole-of-government approach, using political, economic, and military tools as well as propaganda to advance its influence and benefit its interests in the United States.
And I have wanted to welcome back to Arkansas Chairman Chu. Please give Chairman Chu a round of applause.
China is also applying this power in more proactive ways than ever before to exert influence and interfere in the domestic policy and politics of this country.
Chairman Chu, I got to know as he is the CEO and chairman of Shandong Ruyi Technology Group out of Shandong Province.
Over the past 17 years, China's GDP has grown ninefold. It's become the second largest economy in the world. Much of this success was driven by American investment in China. And the Chinese Communist Party has also used an arsenal of policies inconsistent with free and fair trade, including tariffs, quotas, currency manipulation, forced technology transfer, intellectual property theft, and industrial subsidies that are handed out like candy to foreign investment.
We've been to Shandong Province a number of times since I've been governor. We've called on people, and Chairman Chu gave us the opportunity to meet with him at Ruyi, at their technology group there in Shandong, and saw his incredible facility. We asked him to visit Arkansas. He did. So Chairman Chu, we're delighted to have you here. I'm excited about signing this agreement with you, and I welcome you to Arkansas.
These policies have built Beijing's manufacturing base at the expense of its competitors, especially the United States of America.
And I wanted to recognize Chairman Lee to my right, who is the founder of Sun Paper of Shandong Province in China. I also want to recognize Secretary Ma of Shandong Province.
As President Trump said just this week, in his words, we rebuilt China over the last 25 years.
Last November, as you know, I traveled to Shandong Province. I met with Chairman Lee. I toured Sun Paper Company along with Mike Preston. While in China, we signed a letter of intent on behalf of the state of Arkansas with Sun Paper, indicating that Sun Paper wanted to put a major bioproducts mill in South Arkansas, in Arkansas.
The Communist Party has set its sights on controlling 90% of the world's most advanced industries, including robotics, biotechnology, and artificial intelligence. To win the commanding heights of the 21st century economy, Beijing has directed its bureaucrats and businesses to obtain American intellectual property, the foundation of our economic leadership, by any means necessary.
Chairman Lee and I met yesterday. Chairman Lee indicated to me that Sun Paper has selected Arkadelphia in Clark County as the location of a $1 billion bioproducts mill.
Beijing now requires many American businesses to hand over their trade secrets as the cost of doing business in China. It also coordinates and sponsors the acquisition of American firms to gain ownership of their creations. Worst of all, Chinese security agencies have masterminded the wholesale theft of American technology, including cutting-edge military blueprints. And using that stolen technology, the Chinese Communist Party is turning plowshares into swords on a massive scale.
Well, thank you all for joining us via Skype from Beijing this morning. Here in Beijing, it is 10 p.m. in the evening. I've had a very successful trip to China.
China now spends as much on its military as the rest of Asia combined. And Beijing has prioritized capabilities to erode America's military advantages on land, at sea, in the air, and in space.
I've spoken at Tsinghua University here in Beijing, which was a treat for me to speak with young Chinese students about Arkansas, and also to talk about the relationship between China and the United States.
China wants nothing less than to push the United States of America from the Western Pacific and attempt to prevent us from coming to the aid of our allies. But they will fail. Beijing is also using its power like never before. Chinese ships routinely patrol around the Senkaku Islands, which are administered by Japan. And while China's leaders stood in the Rose Garden at the White House in 2015 and said that his country had, and I quote, no intention to militarize the South China Sea. Today, Beijing has deployed advanced anti-ship and anti-air missiles atop an archipelago of military bases constructed on artificial islands. China's aggression was on display this week when a Chinese naval vessel came.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We're kind of wrapping things up here. Really excited that you're going to be here. Hey, first of all, next week, I'm going to be here Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday next week. Not going to be here Thursday and Friday, but we will be covering the news. And, of course, with Thanksgiving the way it is, I always love to read George Washington's Thanksgiving Day Proclamation, Abraham Lincoln's 2 Thanksgiving Day Proclamations. We also like to get into, the initial Governor Bradford's diary when they first came to America and everything else. So it's one of my favorite times of year, quite honestly. Joe Biden is now a grandfather, and he was asked about this. Scroll down, and let's listen to the Washington Examiner reporter ask Joe Biden about his son Hunter impregnating an Arkansas woman. Listen.
I'm wondering if you have a comment on this report in court filing out of Arkansas that your son Hunter just made you grandfather again.
No, that's a private matter. I have no comment. But only you would ask that. You're a good man. You're a good man.
Thank you guys. This is all
Classy.
the time we have.
All right. So there we go. Pretty upset. He's a says the reporter's real classy. Real classy for asking that. But anyway, this is the news. This is the news about a paternity test where Hunter Biden is, in fact, the father. Joe Biden is the grandfather. And and it does read like a Jerry Springer situation. Because this sexual encounter apparently happened while Hunter Biden was courting his sister-in-law. And they later did get married, I believe. So, anyway, pretty frustrating. Are we sure? What? Oh, that's a good joke, Joe. So anyway, we have all next week coming up, and I'm really excited that you guys are going to be here with us. We got more news to get to, and more developments. I have a feeling I'll end where kind of I started. We still don't have enough mainstream media attention. We have virtually no mainstream media attention asking the right questions about the situation with the governor's law firm, his son, China, using the same Chinese clients that are getting taxpayer dollars. So I would like for you guys to continue to share and talk about this on social media as much as you can, even if it's contrived. Feel free to work in an Epstein didn't kill himself. Like post something and say, and the governor's son's making money off of his dad being governor. I mean, do something like that. Here's your meme of the day, courtesy of Bill the Patriot 1776. Some First Church of God marquee posted this. I think it's legitimate. Jesus willingly died for you, unlike Epstein, who didn't kill himself. We'll post this up at Conduit News, the Twitter page at Conduit News. Arkansas, have a great weekend and be safe.